The first episode in this series was about an afternoon beer, dividing work time and personal time. For the final episode, I thought we'd look at the same ritual in more detail by making the beer. As this was brewed in lockdown, there are some important limitations. I shall only use ingredients from the supermarket, and no specific brewing equipment, an Apollo 13 style mission, to brew with what we've got. To make beer we need grains, hops, yeast, water, and the equipment. For grains, I could find barley, wheat grain, and oats. These are not malted though, so I grabbed some malted rice syrup to top up the complex sugars. Hops, you cannot just buy hops in a corner store, so I got the most bitter stuff I could find. Grapefruit, bay leaves and coriander. Yeast, not much choice. Bread yeast. I bought a massive bottle of juice for a fermentation tank. I found this sanitizer for baby products next to nappies. Big win. Also need some soda bottles, a tube and a funnel for later, but let's get on with it. Step 1. The mashing process soaks the grains at optimal temperature to get sugar and enzymes and stuff out of them. So I cracked the grains and soaked them for 70 degrees for 45 minutes. Then remove the grains. Step 2. We boil. First I added some rice syrup for 15 minutes to top up the sugars. I roasted the coriander seeds to bring the flavors out, then just dumped them in with the bay leaves for 45 minutes. I added grapefruit peel for different amounts of time. There's an entire science to this. I am entirely eyeballing this whole thing. Step 3. Cool the whole thing in an ice bath to 21 degrees. I don't have a thermometer, so I'm again guessing. Everything needs to be sanitized now, so let's do that. Step 4. Once it's cooled down, I pour the wort into the fermenter. I've mixed the yeast with water, then pour it in. Finally, I made an airlock with this hose, allowing gas to bubble out the tube into a bottle of water, but stops anything from climbing in. Fermentation takes about 10 days. After 1 day it will begin to bubble. I actually made several batches of this process, testing different things. I tried malting my own grain and harvesting yeast from Cooper's sediment. This batch looked the worst, but turned out the best. Think about that for a moment. What a metaphor. Anyway, next step is bottling. First I sanitize everything. Then to carbonate the beer I add a little bit of sugar to each bottle to condition it. Normally you'd want to siphon beer so it's less exposed to oxygen, but I can't see that making a difference to this nonsense brew. So now we're back to where we first started, drinking the beer. Of the 3 batches I produced, all of them were undercarbonated. They didn't exactly taste like beer as you know it. But this one was quite good, as a very bitter and light-wit beer. This one looked the most like beer. I went to a huge effort to malt grains at home and harvest yeast from Cooper's. It was drinkable, but not terribly enjoyable. To say the third one was disgusting would be polite. It was awful. Never seen my father so close to vomiting. I suppose this makes it a good place to end the series. What better illustrates a fickle ritual than spending a ridiculous amount of time, at considerable effort and cost, to produce something significantly worse than the readily available and substantially cheaper commercial alternative. This was also an obvious chance to flex my beer skills.